So let's keep going along with Horkheimer's essay, the traditional and critical theory. And so let's think back to just the previous video. This is number 2 in the series. The first one I ended on this notion that a key point that Horkheimer is asserting. He hasn't argued really anything yet. And so let's follow him in his assertions, and then when he tries to actually build an argument that supports these assertions. So far he's just been doing a little bit of history and talking about theory in the good old-fashioned sense of the term, and it's this sort of structure of propositions that's been laid out. And so he says that scientists, they kind of make a move here. They move from this structure of propositions. They're interconnected. They can draw inferences. Remember, there's sort of 2 types of propositions. One are sort of these base propositions. They could be grounded in more of an empirical kind of framework where you just, I'm looking at the universe and I'm making some observations, then I'm making some generalizations, and those will be my base propositions. And then I'll bring in a little bit of logic and I'll infer some stuff. And then I'll call those inferred propositions from the base. So the base form the argument, and then the inference, and then the propositions that are the inferences, those would be predictions. So those propositions, let's go out and check. And if experience again squares with your inferences, your predictions, then you think, hey, then my initial propositions, I think I'm onto something here. Or maybe those base propositions, initial propositions, might be grounded, on some kind of intuition or whatever. That's not the important thing. The key thing is that you have this sort of bifurcated structure, that all these things they're coherent, they all fit together, but some of them are grounded, and you don't really question those, but you draw inferences from them, and then you make predictions, and then you go check. Okay, so this structure becomes what scientists think is the essence of theory. So they think, we got what theory really is now, according to Horkheimer's view of science and scientists, that they make this move. Oh, this is an independent kind of logical structure. So this is the way theory has to be done, all of it. So again, right, the traditional critical theory, so that should start, he's thinking of theory as maybe like a genus where there's different ways to do theory. And so this is just this is a certain way. This is kind of the traditional, and he's kind of the old-fashioned way of doing theory, is that you then make this move to thinking that your bifurcated structure of a coherent set of propositions, that's some logical, independent, way that theory has to be done that way, or that's the best way, or the unchallengeable way. But it's an independent way. Sort of we stumble onto this sort of abstract thing. So there's kind of a whiff of Platonism in this, right? We got the one way to do theory. Okay, and Horkheimer's going to go, no, that's not a good move there. What you guys are thinking of is the essence of theory, and you're moving to this. No, that's wrong. That you're kidding yourselves, or you're deluded, or you're making a mistake, or you're making, maybe to be more ingenuous. He doesn't really explain, but kind of you're making a bad inference. You're actually, come a little bit later, he thinks you're reifying something. It's an abstract thing. You're reifying it. You're making it into sort of a concrete thing that, this is the only way to do it. It has to be done. And he's also bringing in sort of, this is ideological in the sense that you're naturalizing it. And you're just saying, well, it's just the natural way to do it. How else could you do it? And he's saying, look, no, that's not right. Where we should go is, in reality, what's going on is what you think is the essence of theory, and you're naturalizing, you're doing this move. You should look, and you're noticing that what you think is how you're doing theory corresponds to the immediate tasks that you set for yourselves. So he's giving, at least he thinks he's giving and trying to give, is a historical explanation for the origin of theory. This is how theories come about. So if you want to know what theories really are, look at how they're developed. They have stories, right? They are constructions. As he says, he goes on, well, look, manipulating physical nature, that's what scientists do. That's the scientific method. Yeah, you look, you manipulate, you make predictions, you look again, you do manipulation. You're not just staring at stuff, you're manipulating things. You're doing stuff. This is work. This is labor, right? Science is a kind of labor. It's part of the general giant social program of labor, right? So, right, you can got that whiff of Marxism, right? It's all labor of some kind. And there's no such thing as radically independent labor. It's all connected up. Okay, that's jumping a little bit ahead. But so manipulating physical nature, right? That's the amassing of knowledge. And that's what you're doing is you're trying to jam all this knowledge into an ordered body of propositions. That's that theory thing again, right? It's an ordered, coherent set. It's got some logic in it, base propositions, inferences, predictions. Yeah, then you feed that back in the system. So there's kind of a feedback loop, but it's labor, right? There's stuff's going on, and it's all done by flesh and blood critters like us. Okay, so what's going on? Again, you got this particular version of the theory, right? That, it's independent logical structure, which in reality was born at a certain time, connected to certain concerns. So in reality, it's historical, but you go from here and you jump over this, and this particular version, independent logical structure, particular version, becomes absolutized. So I'm just kind of going over the same ground that I was going over here. It's seen to be grounded in some sort of, though this is the inner nature of knowledge. We've found something out about really what knowledge is, right? So the notion of epistemology, right? The theory of knowledge. We've got the real theory now. This is how knowledge works, and it's not historical anymore. We've got sort of like the form. Horkheimer doesn't say it, but I certainly catch a lot of Platonic sort of notions. We've got it now. We've got the form of knowledge, right? Through our activities, we've tapped into some deeper form of knowledge that in the end is independent of our activities. So we then see this as grounded in the inner nature of knowledge. Then all of a sudden, bang, the historical stuff drops out. And I mean, if you do, look at math proofs and look at the theory of general relativity in any standard physics textbook, there's no history, right? It looks like it just descended from heaven, right? It's all full of these abstract symbols. It's very difficult if you don't know the language to link it up with anything physical. And another thing is that if you were studying if you're studying in a modern physics setting and you're like a grad student and you're doing, a course on general relativity, I remember doing that. You're working with the theory in a form that Einstein would not have worked with that theory, right? So even the product of his labor. It looks different now than when he was working with it. I'm not going to say that he couldn't read a modern physics textbook, but it would have looked a little odd to him, especially in the developments in the last 40 years. It's not that the theory has changed, but the representation of it, and that's another thing that Horkheimer's alluding to, and certainly we've seen in the other lecture series on ideology, is that one of the things that it has that ideological flavor is when something hides its historical origins. Science is often accused of hiding its historical origins. Because again, if you read a modern textbook on general relativity, this stuff it does arguably look like it falls out of the sky. It didn't, but it has that feel because it's so abstractly written. Mathematics, oh my God, that's even worse, right? That stuff looks like it comes from the angels. And what Horkheimer and the gang are saying, look, it doesn't. It's just written like that. But it's very easy to move this way when you're constructing all this theory and to forget that, look, this corresponds to immediate needs. Einstein was trying to solve very particular problems in the foundations of physics, very concrete issues, and he derives all this stuff. There's a problem with Mercury's orbit. Newtonian mechanics can't handle it. Stuff like that. But that's all lost in the formalism. So then this formalism, I'm going to use that term to, it becomes formalized, this formalism. It's sort of the historical stuff drops out, and then it's easy to absolutize it, see it as grounded in the inner nature of knowledge, dehistoricize, and then this eventually says Horkheimer, it's now this reified ideological category. Okay, so yeah, it's all the historical stuff is dropped out. And then you think, like the very theory of theory, right, which became big in the 20th century, was this notion of theories of theory, was a lot in German mathematics and philosophy, Husserl and the gang. They thought, they had the form of theory. And Horkheimer's saying, you guys are reifying historically created objects and thinking you're tapping into some kind of logos of the universe. Well, but on the other hand, we can question this. Um, let's bring all this a little bit, down to earth. Is this sort of discussion kind of a version of something like, okay, look at 1 plus 1 equals 2. We could say something like, well, that's not innate. Babies and stuff, you're not born knowing this. You learn this in school, right? There was a time where you didn't know the answer. If I went, oh, what's 1 plus 1? And you can try this with little kids. They don't know, right? Think about also if you're with really little guys, little guys, and you line up a bunch of like blocks on a table, and then you say, okay, Billy, count these little blocks, right? Lots of times, a really, really little kid, it's quite cute, but they'll count like the first block, they might count that twice. They'll go 1, 2, 3, and they might skip 1, 4, 5, and you're like, okay, no, that's not how it works. And you teach how to count. And then if you teach kids how to add, right, you're teaching them. They don't know how to do it, right? So even these simple ones. And then you start with concrete blocks. And then, of course, kids, they learn arithmetic very concretely at first. And then they get more abstract, like, okay, how many sleeps until Christmas or your birthday or whatever. That's a very abstract one because now you're not counting blocks anymore. You're counting sleeps and summing up sleeps and things like that. So this is all, again, all I'm just saying here is that 1 plus 1 equals 2. This proposition, it's not innate. It's learned in experience. It's taught in experience. Thank a teacher. If 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, thank a teacher somewhere. Well, do we want to say, wait a second, oh, if you say something like, oh, 1 plus 1 equals 2, maybe it's not innate, but it's a timeless proposition that I've learned. Have you done this? Right? Have you made a deep mistake and you've become ideological about arithmetic, right? Oh, that's an ideological move to say that 1 plus 1 equals 2. I've just shown you that you learned it historically, but if you now tell me that it's a timeless truth, that's ideological. That seems a little odd, but maybe that is what Horkheimer is saying. Like, can we? Do we have to say that 1 plus 1 equals 2 because of this sort of discussion, that it's really historically contingent, that the very content of what you learned in counting those blocks, in counting, and the very content of the propositions that you learned through manipulating the blocks, like nobody's denying that you manipulated the blocks to arrive at a construction by which you could understand 1 plus 1 equals 2. So, but is the total content of 1 plus 1 equals 2 exhausted by the constructive processes by which you learned that concept, right? There's nothing left over. After you exhaust all the historical stuff regarding 1 plus 1 equals 2 for humanity, there's nothing left over. It's just a historical thing. It's kind of like a cave painting or whatever. It's completely reducible down to the products like of art or whatever, that this doesn't allow us, and there's nothing more to this than just the blocks and the processes, and that's it. There's nothing left. And again, just like a painting or whatever, it's a constructed object. All right. So again, I'm just kind of going along with, can we legitimately infer from how to come to know X, like the historical processes, from to the very inner nature and the totality of X. So that, okay, yep, it's all empirical, that all historical, coming to know 1 plus 1 equals 2. We infer that that's the whole story to 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's just the same way that you learned that you like the taste of hamburger or rhubarb or whatever, right? There's nothing more after that. It's just unpackable that way. So I think that Horkheimer is moving in that direction. Yes, he wants to move in that direction. That it is ultimately some kind of reification in ideology to move from historically constructed objects to thinking of them as anything more than that, right? To kind of move up to some sort of metaphysical notion or whatever. No. That's going this route, and that's wrong with respect to theory. We should always keep an eye on this one. And we shouldn't allow science to escape, right? If we say art is all historically contingent and products of cultures and all that, science is as well. So there's a lot of the sociology of knowledge, a few decades ago, there was it was called a strong program, as they were going to say, hey, not just art, not just ethics, not just this, but even science, like even the hard sciences, those have sociological groundings as well. They should not be, quote unquote, allowed to escape, right? They're just like anything else. And we have to incorporate all of this. So that's kind of what Horkheimer is doing, is bringing everything into the sociological / kind of Marxian fold. Okay, now to help support this view, so if you're thinking, oh, I'm not so sure if this move, if this notion that reducing 1 + 1 is equal to 2 may be down to contingent historical truths, to help support this, and most importantly, to help support that this shouldn't be seen, but it should be seen like this, Horkheimer is going to then look at the notion of theory change. How do theories change? Not simply what do theories predict and all that, but we change our theories, right? We, as I mentioned, general relativity. Well, that was the successor to Isaac Newton's theory of gravitation, and of course, you hear a lot of talk amongst physicists that, oh, well, general relativity might not be our final theory either. Maybe we'll have some theory of quantum gravity. And why is that? Well, we look at the data, we look at stuff, and so we could change a theory again. So Horkheimer is picking up on the notion of theory change to support this view that we should move away from that and to keep this in mind. So in the next video, I'm going to check out a little bit of what Horkheimer has to say about theory change. And just as a sneak preview, he's saying, look, this can't be understood in the abstract. We have to, again, that's another push away from the essence of theory being this, independent logical structure, to more about something being connected with tasks and labor. And so theory change cannot be understood in the abstract. It shouldn't be reified into an ideological category. It should be understood in this concrete thing. So theory change is going to be absorbed onto this side. Well, Horkheimer is going to try and motivate that belief. See you next video.